Today, we're going to be talking about the Cloverfield Paradox and the Greatest Showman. So stay tuned.
Welcome to The Real Review.
Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of film and television.
Yep.
I am Joel, and I am here with Matt. I almost got this wrong.
Okay.
Matt, everything was awesome over the weekend. Hey.
Hey, yeah.
I know what that's from. Yeah.
And I'm here with Joel,
Did you
the Cunningham Paradox.
The Cunningham Paradox.
Yes.
Did you get where mine was from?
The Lego thing?
Yeah, because you were at Legoland.
I took the kiddos to Legoland. They actually enjoyed the beach more, I feel like.
Really?
Yeah, they just were, it was freezing cold. It was like 3 hours of them running around. Just the novelty of being at a beach, I think, was cool. And yeah, it was fun. They were like, yeah.
Gotcha.
Just running in the water. They weren't swimming. Yeah.
I like the new Venom trailer. I actually haven't never been to Legoland. I've been to the beach, though.
I went awesome. Like 4 years ago. I was disappointed.
By the beach?
Legoland.
At Legoland, okay.
Yeah, this time around it was a little better. They have really sweet like miniature lands. They have like a whole Star Wars one.
Oh, cool.
There's one like section for each film. It's actually
nice.
pretty cool. I saw the Jakku one that they did just recently, and it's pretty sweet looking.
I would be fearful that everywhere you would walk in the park, they would just be constantly on loop that song. Everything is awesome. I feel like
I only heard it like one time.
Like one time? Okay.
Yeah. I think they're aware of that.
They don't
self-conscious.
Don't overplay that card.
Yes.
Yes. Probably when you're walking in.
Yeah, it was overplayed, before the end of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyways, welcome to the podcast here, ladies and gentlemen. We are so glad and excited to have you here. We took a little bit of a hiatus there just because Matt was taking a cool trip. And
I took a cool trip, got a family, full-time job.
Yes.
Life is crazy. We're moving, sold a house, bought a house.
Congrats.
Ridiculous.
It's awesome stuff. I am just still living where I'm at. So,
yeah. You're the same
Doing my
place.
thing. I do want to move at some point. Maybe. Who knows? But I'm happy with where I'm at too. So today we're going to be talking about two films, like I mentioned. But before we get to that, Matt, why don't you give our listeners and our watchers on the vidcast a couple ways to get connected?
Yes.
To the podcast.
You can all get connected with us in a number of different ways. Number one hub you can kind of find all this stuff is realreviewmedia.com. And you can connect it with all of our social medias, our email. So that's Twitter, Instagram, social media, along with Facebook at Real Review Media. And then youtube.com/The Real Review. You can see some trailer reactions. I have a couple new ones posted from the Super Bowl up there. I got a couple more in the works as well. And email us questions, thoughts, things like that. And that's that.
There it is. So we had two big-ish movies kind of come out this week, and then 517 to Yuma or whatever.
517 to Yuma.
I'm just kidding. We had
Yuma Paris.
We had to Paris. The Peter Rabbit movie, and then we also had the final of the Gray films. Whatever it is, I can't think of them right now.
Still making those.
Yes, thankfully those are done. Neither of which we went to see, so we're going to be taking a little bit of a step back and going into a bit of the films that we wanted to talk about that we haven't had a chance to.
Yeah.
The first of which was a film that you might have probably been a bit more excited about than I was.
Yes.
I'm talking about a film called The Cloverfield. Why don't we get into it? You ready?
Yeah, Paradox.
Okay.
Cloverfield Paradox. Let's do it.
We're talking about The Cloverfield Paradox. This movie, synopsis for it here. A group of scientific researchers on a space station attempt to harness, a new energy source called the God particle, only to unleash something terrifying. Its director is Julius Onah. It stars David Oyelowo. I'm probably murdering
Oyelowo.
Oyelowo. I don't know. Yeah,
that's better.
Gugu Mbatha-Raw. Mbatha-Raw. You're great at these. Jeez. Chris O'Dowd. I can get that one. Daniel Bruhl. Zizi Zhan, who I haven't seen anything for a while, and Elizabeth Debicki. So you should just do the names from now on. I just murder them. So
that's okay.
So the funny thing about this one was we had, I forget the reviewer who talked about it, but it was like the shortest period of build up for wanting to hype and wanting to see a movie ever, as far as like being released and not being able to see it.
That's the best thing about this movie.
Yeah,
I think I feel like it shattered. It took what could be in a new direction. It's really the kind of the forefront in just the type of marketing.
Right. Because it was literally like, we got this movie coming out. It's going to be coming out. It's going to be it's going to be on Netflix. And then right during the Super Bowl, hey, boo, by the way, as soon as this is over, go check the movie out. Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
I remember I had a friend texting me. They're like, dude, it comes out like after the game. I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this has never been done before. This is a thing that people are looking forward to. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. They could have really put a lot of time and effort into kind of getting the marketing together, especially after coming out off of Cloverfield Lane, which a lot of people really liked. I really liked.
That was I love 10 Cloverfield Lane. Yeah.
Yeah. So with this one, I will say in that little hour and a half period where I was kind of waiting to start watching the movie, it was a little bit longer than that because I had like people over and stuff. They had to get out. But
get out.
Like in my mind, I was trying to approach this with the idea of it being probably not as awesome as Cloverfield Lane. There's just something in me that just said that this probably wasn't going to, because they're really reaching for it, but probably better than the first one. The first one, it was a cool concept in a way, but it was the characters and the way the plot progressed and everything like that. It just left me feeling really like, a bit.
I loved the first one and the second one.
And I don't get nauseous a lot in theaters, but that first one, man.
Did it really?
That one actually really did. Yeah, I don't get nauseous that easily.
I saw it in the theater with like 7 other people. We kind of went on a whim.
Yeah.
And I was the only one that liked it when we left the theater.
Really?
I was like, that was awesome. Everybody was like, I hated that movie. It was kind of dumb. I was like, oh. And then I just kind of was quiet to myself because everybody was talking about how much they didn't like it. I was like, I liked it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But we can talk about that one maybe another time. Why don't we get into the Paradox film?
Yeah.
So what are your initial thoughts? Good, bad, otherwise?
I see why Paramount sold it to Netflix. I think this one in particular, they did it with 10 Cloverfield Lane, but I think they pulled it off more successfully with 10 Cloverfield Lane. 10 Cloverfield Lane and this film were both different films, not intended to be Cloverfield movies originally, but they were rewritten and reshot to accommodate that.
Yeah.
So I think this one shines a big old spotlight on the problem with that format of making movies.
Yeah.
I like the idea that in that format they can find ways to potentially save money in doing that by buying something that's already been created and just tacking on the stuff, which is lazy. But if it's done right, like 10 Cloverfield Lane, like I really enjoyed. I thought that was really good. So what this shows me is that this is not a sustainable thing for the franchise, because I just thought this movie was meh.
Yeah.
I will say, though, I was really intrigued at the very beginning, the first 30 minutes. I was like, what the heck is going on?
Yeah.
And I was really into it. You have amazing actors. Like, all these people are really amazing. They're just not given enough to do.
Right. I really felt like they were directed oddly. They kind of went with the staple of kind of who they are just by default as characters a lot of times. I mean, Chris O'Dowd is a great example of that. He kind of plays this goofy, lovable, fun guy. And he was trying to be a serious version of that, but it kept leaking heavily into that more goofy kind of style with him.
Yeah. It's totally weird
like
whenever that
thing,
stuff. Yeah.
You know, and we don't have to get into spoilers necessarily, but it was kind of like I left feeling at times with some of the characters, it was like, I don't know how to connect to you because you're kind of acting this way, but I can tell your personality is more like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Gugu, I thought, was definitely the standout, but that's just because you get most of her story than anybody else.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily... She's an amazing actress, and she's great in everything that I've ever seen her in.
Yeah.
But I think just overall, it was kind of the screenplay, the script, they weren't given enough to do. It didn't delve into their backstories more. Bro, I mean, you have so many amazing people in this cast.
Yep.
And so it just didn't lend a hand to it. The story overall, I understood what they were trying to do. I liked the concept. I really liked the concept. I just don't feel like it was executed very well. And I understand how it plays into the picture. I did some research. I understand how it plays into the greater picture of the Cloverfield universe. I fully get it. But you could definitely just kind of feel like everything was just tacked on, all the Cloverfield stuff.
It really made it seem like the story they were trying to tell with this was kind of how the monsters might have arrived or appeared.
It's the one film that connects all the films.
Right.
And I feel like I understand and I like that, because what they did in concept here is basically create a reason why this is happening, why it happened, and then why it's going to happen, and all this random stuff happens in the future.
Right. Yeah. We got to see the bunker from 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I thought was kind of odd that he took the little girl to that bunker. I mean, didn't he take her to the bunker? I mean, that's what it looked like.
That was not that.
Okay.
That was not that bunker.
Okay. It looked just like the bunker.
No.
Okay.
It wasn't.
All
It
right.
was different. It wasn't the same one. It
Okay.
was just, and that's part of the storytelling. That was all added. All the stuff on Earth was
Yeah.
added after the fact.
I thought that's what that was tying into. I thought
No.
that tied into the fact that he was in the bunker and then
Oh, it was a bunker.
okay.
Yeah, not the bunker.
Because there's a part of the other. Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Anyways.
because we have to get into spoilers if we go there. Yeah.
I liked the visuals. I thought were kind of cool. I was really into the visuals. I'll give it a positive on that. But other than that, the story was just weak sauce. I will say that Netflix was genius in buying this and releasing it the way that they did, because I think that gained way more interest than they would have gotten if they would have done some theatrical release or like build up to it kind of a thing. I feel like people are like, what?
Yeah.
And people were like that. Paramount, they would have lost money, I feel like, if they would have released it in theaters, just because it's not good. The other ones had good money and they made 600% of what they spent on marketing and production.
Yeah.
But this just it wasn't as good, and you felt it.
Yeah.
There's not a lot to say other than this. I felt like meh at the end.
What about positives?
I thought the visuals looked really good to me.
Yeah.
Some of it was really interesting. There's one scene in particular with a lady in the movie that I was like, there was kind of a kind of gross out, terrifying thing. I was like, oh, that's gnarly. What is happening right now? When I saw that, I was like, ugh.
Yeah.
But outside of that, about after 30 to 45 minutes, I was kind of like, what's happening? And then it was just...
I agree. Visually, there was a lot of good moments.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of strength to it. There was definitely squeamish moments where you're kind of like going, ooh, and I liked that. I mean, there's like a bit of a horror element to a lot of space sci-fi that I can kind of understand and kind of be okay with. It went a bit far a lot of times for me. The worms are a good example. Yeah. Like, I mean,
that was nasty.
It just felt, it felt like, and then I'm left asking, and that was kind of the biggest negative to me. I mean, so positives I should stick with. Acting, I thought as well, was really good. Overall production design, I mean, everything looked fitting, and the spaceship looked really cool.
Yeah,
I mean,
the station, it looked sweet. Yeah.
I thought the design of it and the way that it worked was really awesome. That's kind of, I mean, almost it for positives. Story-wise, there was so many things that they set up, and they were like, this is going to be something that's cool or important, or we're going to explain, and they never did.
Right.
And it ended up really kind of upsetting me after a while, because I was like, well, why does that guy have... I mean, I get it in principle because of the situation, but like, why does that guy have worms?
Yeah.
And like, why were the worms even there? And like, what, there's just so many elements to the story, like, they never really went in depth with, and they never really explained certain things, and it just kind of ended up being a sense of like, well, because we need this to happen so we can do this and go there. I mean, the spinny drive thing, the little gyro sphere, the way that it kind of just disappeared and then reappeared, and it's like, well, when did that happen? Like, was he was that just happening for a long time and he didn't feel it? That was so random. A lot of elements like that.
Yeah.
And
it's a lot of random stuff.
And I felt like as well, I understand why they did it, but the whole, what's happening on Earth did not very well at all tie into what was happening on the space station. They tried to, at the very end, kind of bring those two worlds together in a way that was like important and critical to the plot, but it never felt like it needed. It really felt like it actually almost would have been better served if they had just left it on the space station.
Yeah.
Like, I understand why they wanted to kind of tell the backstory. At least for the main character, but you can do that, but then just stick it on the spaceship. And then that's part of in a sense, that's part of what people like about these sci-fi space movies, is that you feel that isolation and that sense of dread of being stuck in this claustrophobic environment with whatever the crazy things and not being able to get away with the crazy things, and you can't stop them from happening. I never felt that, I felt like we're constantly kind of making this about that bigger picture of, everything that's happening with Cloverfield and the monsters, and that just wasn't important to me. It's like, I want to just keep it here. So overall it felt like a cheapened version of like Event Horizon,
or
like Doom or something.
What was that space movie? Life. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Same sort of deal.
Yeah. So,
I mean, the biggest thing that this one did differently was that it added in that idea of what it means when you kind of cross dimensions,
right?
And sort of being what happens when you're like, I think in two dimensions
the
at once.
ultimate like explain away thing. Basically, anything that happens weird from this point on in the Cloverfield universe, is explained by this movie.
Yeah,
because anything can happen.
Right.
That's basically the gist of it.
Because of the paradox.
Yes. Right. Anyways, so they already know, they're already working on other stuff. I'm a little sad at the fact that I'm pretty sure Netflix has the rights to it now. So whenever they release a new Cloverfield movie, I'm bummed by the fact we're not going to get another theatrical experience, because that's what I loved about the first two.
Yeah.
I did really enjoy that. But at the same time, I want them to let spotlight, I was telling you about earlier, how it's a negative light on this kind of filmmaking, tacking stuff on after the fact. I want them to make just a legit, like, ground up Cloverfield movie.
Yeah.
I was telling a friend, I think the next step would be you release a movie called like, like the rumored next one's supposed to be like take place in World War II or something like that. So I think what would be cool is if, like, you used to release this like crazy World War II trailer and it's called like, D-Day or something like that. And you go to it, and then at the end, the title card comes up D-Day, and then like something Cloverfield, and you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like that'd be like the next step. I saw this thing too. Another friend sent me where like the next movie, J.J. Abrams swings by your house and throws a DVD in your window. The next Cloverfield movie. So it's kind of funny, but overall, I give this a 70. This is kind of like, meh.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a little bit lower. I really had a hard time after a certain point separating what felt like just this shock and awe tactic from what I was trying to get from the movie, which I didn't leave the movie really feeling like I got anything beyond just a little bit of like kind of where maybe these creatures sort of came from in the Cloverfield movie. I don't feel like I needed to get the stories. I don't feel like I needed to go on this journey with any of the characters, and I don't know. So I'd probably give it closer to like a 67.
Okay.
68.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I think my emotional tie in fandom to the previous Cloverfield movies is what's kind of wanting me to
it's tough
in that way. It's tough though. I wish I could give a better grade, but 70.
Yeah, it was like, first Cloverfield, like, blurt down here, I'm going to do for the camera. And then it was like, next Cloverfield was like, whoa, great job, guys. You did a lot with the little. And then this one I was like, really? What are you But I do give them, I will say as well, like you said, I give them a lot of credit for their desire to do things a bit differently with the release.
Yeah.
And trying to change
very
things
clever.
up.
Everybody was like freaking out. All the people that I know, I was like, what? It's kind of a crazy thing.
Yeah. So next film then, we'll move on. We'd love to hear your thoughts as well. We don't talk about this very often during the middle of the podcast, but definitely send us an email if you had thoughts on that movie.
Yeah, tell me.
I'd love to hear that. Yeah. So the next film we're going to be talking about is The Greatest Showman.
This is the greatest show.
Inspired by the imagination of P.T. Barnum, The Greatest Showman is an original musical that celebrates the birth of show business and tells of a visionary who rose from nothing to create a spectacle that became a world sensation. Directed by Michael Gracie, stars Hugh Jackman. Or Hugh Jackman. Yeah.
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman. Zac Efron, Michelle Williams, Rebecca Ferguson. I'm not going to go through all these people.
Yeah,
Zendaya, Paul Sparks, Zendaya. And that's kind of like the big uns.
Yeah.
I would say Tina Benko is also there as Miss Winthrop. So I'll start with this one.
Yeah, go for it.
If you want.
This one, I'm very conflicted on this movie.
I was conflicted as well. I would say going into it, the trailer did all the wrong things for me. By default, I'm kind of ambivalent towards most musicals. Mm-hmm. I see a musical. There's people out there that hate them, that just see a trailer and they're just like, oh my gosh, I hate musicals. Singing, what doesn't even make sense? And there's other people like, oh my gosh, that's a musical. I love them. And a lot of those people are people that love being in musicals and doing them. And I was in musicals. Like when I was in college, I used to sing and dance, believe it or not. And but at this point, I'm still ambivalent. I can look at a musical and kind of go, and separate elements from different things. But I understand that they have a different tone and style than from your standard everyday kind of film. They're usually these they have like one driving idea that's like this big grandiose idea, and then all the that's the theme, and then all the music and the acting and the production design, everything kind of in a way goes towards treating that idea as something special, or talking about that theme.
Yeah.
With this movie, it really felt like with the trailer, the theme was going to be about this: we are different, we stand proud, despite what the world holds against us, despite, the facial hair that we have as women, not to be rude, but that's kind of what it gave to me. And that is like the least connectable
It was
that's
a small part, very small
right.
part.
Well, and that's the plot that I see a lot of times in like kids movies. It's like, you're awesome for who you are, like stand up for what you believe in. Like that's like the plot of a kids movie. And so it came across as being very young and very simple. And so I didn't have high expectations for it. I know Hugh Jackman is a great actor, especially for stage. He does a lot of musicals. Too. Right. Yeah. So I went into this thinking kind of pretty lowly of it, thinking that it's going to be a little bit like, bleh, simple, boring. And was actually surprised by a couple things. One of the big things that I really liked about this movie was the music.
So good.
So good.
Yeah. As far as pop music is concerned, really, really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Really. And I will stand by that. Now, I mean, you could hear most of these songs on like an album. You know what I mean? I felt like you could
There's a lot of good ones too. Like I was listening to them later. I was like, I want to listen to that song again.
I was kind of like, bopping my head along with it and really enjoying those elements of it. The other thing is the story in and of itself is much more about P.T. Barnum. And it's about that sense of can our appetite exceed our grasp, or are we going to, like the hubris of man, are we going to push ourselves so far that we kind of end up burning ourselves or hurting those that are around us? How much is too much kind of a thing? And I liked that.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of other elements at play in the script.
Yep.
And that's where it starts to tiptoe into negative territory. But I want to hear your thoughts before I go.
Positives, the music I thought that's the biggest thing for me. That was really good. And it's really Hugh Jackman. That's what this movie is about. It's his movie. Yeah. And he's a star. He's a star in everything he does. He's always giving 158%. He's always like full, like Wolverine crazy, like into it.
Yeah.
And really, really great in this movie, Hugh Jackman. So, positives, I thought everything looked good. The music was stellar. If you're into pop music, if you're into like more traditional theatrical stuff, it's not really in that vein.
It's not classical musical music.
Right. So, but really good. But I guess some of the people that wrote for La La Land did the music for this
really?
movie. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's
interesting. But the music kind of also, this is where I get conflicted a little bit. I will say I thought things looked really well. For the most part, everybody acted really well. But again, Hugh Jackman's a star, the music. For me, diving into like, this is where I start feeling conflicted, which I didn't like. First, the music didn't fit the time period.
Not at all. Yeah.
Which is what kept throwing me out. I was like, okay, you guys are doing this, like, I feel like you should be doing some sort of like traditional, like old school, like music.
Yeah.
And it's like this, like beats and guitars and like crazy stuff that I was like, oh, this is more modern and it doesn't fit. Right. It clashed in my mind. I was like, I want to like this more than what's happening right now, but it's confusing to my mind. I'm having a hard time grasping it. The other side that I really wish it would have been, there's too many side things. This movie, I think, would have been better served as a movie focusing more. I know you brought up the part that is like him, how much is too much and all that stuff. And especially with the stuff with Rebecca Ferguson and all that. Yeah. I wanted the movie, the main conflict to be more about the struggle from getting from nothing to where he ended up.
Right.
Because that's a more traditional storytelling element to it. But it seemed too easy. Like it was like, I'm struggling and then everything's fine the next day, Like,
it was like bad things, have a conversation with my kids. Everything is awesome. Right. Everything is perfect. Yeah.
Exactly. And so that was a problem. It focused way too much the conflict on the relational stuff between him and his wife, which that stuff is okay, but in the context of having it in a bigger, the struggle from getting from nothing to where you are. Right. The stuff with Rebecca Ferguson, I was like, what is this? And then also with Zac Efron's character and Zendaya, I was like, this is so, you don't know the characters, so why do I care if they fall in love? Right. I don't know.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think if they had spent more time really just making the story about one element, if they just spent it making about P.T. Barnum's story, it would have been a bit more interesting to me. But it definitely felt like he achieved success and notoriety way too early in the film. I mean, it was almost the beginning of the second act. He had already become wealthy and successful enough, just not in his own eyes.
And any opposition that came up was fixed within like the next 5 minutes.
Right. And I think if they'd spent more time developing that aspect of the story instead of going into, Zac Efron's story and the other characters and kind of their whole, the world doesn't love us for who we are and stuff. which is important and sounds horrible when I say it that way.
Yeah.
But if they'd spent more time focusing on Hugh Jackman's story, then Huge Jackman, they spent more time talking about P.T. Barnum. I'm going to just say that his story, then it would have been much more relatable and connectable. Because as it was, they kind of built up to this break with his character that ended up being very deserved by the plot. Because I had spent so much time in other elements at that point that it felt like on a scale of 1 to 10, as far as intensity of a break, it felt like maybe a 4. Yeah. Where it should have been closer to like an 8 or a 9. Yeah. But at that point, he had almost been out of the story. Yeah. I mean, we'd been telling the story of like, Zendaya and Zac Efron's character. I mean, their whole romantic thing. We've been telling all the story of Michelle Williams, and we've been going into all these subplots and all these sub characters that finally, when that break happens, you're kind of like, oh, well, that's not great. That kind of stinks. Yeah. And I saw it coming from it coming from a mile away.
Yeah, there's nothing surprising about it.
Right. Yeah. Literally, it just became, because I know P.T. Barnum and the whole, tent thing, literally after a certain point in the film, it just became, I said to myself in the back of my head, and this isn't a spoiler because I'm just telling you what I was thinking in my head, but I was thinking, so when is the place going to burn down so they can put it all in a tent? That was literally what I was thinking the entire after about the first quarter of the film. Because I was like, well, they have to get into a tent. Yep. And obviously he's kind of doing other things right now. So that was like, and so there was very little of that. But the music was good enough to me. And I agree as well, it completely discordant from the time period. Yep. I mean, I felt like it was like a modern pop song being put within a completely different era and time period. But it was really good. That's the thing. It was
really good.
So it's
I have the album.
There you go. So if you like the music, then you're able to kind of, in a way, just forget about that, I think. Mm-hmm. Like, it's still there. It's still obvious thing. But you're like, but the music's really good. So I don't really mind as much.
Zac Efron's really good at musicals.
He is.
He's really good at musicals. And I always forget that he started there. Yeah. And then I see this, I was like, oh, he's like natural. Yeah. Like when he does like all the, choreography, dancing, singing, and all that stuff. And
yeah, I'm glad they didn't have Paul Sparks sing. I don't feel like he would have done a very good job. Right. I'm not a great, he is so hit or miss for me. A lot more miss than hit. Yeah. He was great in Boardwalk Empires, but other than that, I've kind of just been like, he's in House of Cards as well. Yeah. Anyway, overall, I did grow in my respect, I think, a little bit for Zendaya. Yeah. I felt like she, as of this point, everybody talks about her like she's amazing, but I just haven't really seen enough of her, and I felt like she did a good job in this. I felt like she was relatable and I could kind of connect with where she was coming from in a lot of it. So, overall, what's your sense of this film? What are you going to give it rating? Unless there's anything else you want to mention.
I'm going to give it a 73.
73? Yeah. Okay. I'm probably going to give it about the same. Okay. I was going to go for like a 72. Okay. So I'm going to stick with that just because... Cool.
Difference. This is me.
This is me.
That's one of the songs, just in case you didn't know.
Awesome. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up on the podcast then. Yep. As we sign off, love to give you some ways to get connected. Again, just as a reminder, we get the website, realreviewmedia.com. We've also got our Facebook, which is facebook.com/realreviewmedia. We'd also love to connect with you on Twitter or Instagram, which are both at Real Review Media. Additionally, as I mentioned, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Cloverfield Paradox. Yep. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Greatest Showman as well. If you had some good experiences, some bad experiences, maybe you were bopping your head along, let us know what you thought of the movies. Drop us an email, drop us a line, realreviewmedia@gmail.com.
Do it.
So there you go. Anything else, Matt, for us on the podcast today?
That's it.
All right. Well, it's been real.
It's been real.